The Edmonton Oilers picked up a pair of crucial wins on their New York swing against the Islanders on Friday and tonight against the New York Rangers. On today's edition of Locked On Oilers, why the wins were so important, what worked well for the Oil over the weekend, and what it means for the final 15 games of the regular season on today's edition of Locked On Oilers.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Victory Monday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Sararis. I want to thank everyone that's making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year subscription. So, on today's show, we are going to break down the keys to victory in particular the game against the Rangers on Sunday night, and we'll approach it from the perspective of winning with the superstar mentality, and we'll try and articulate why this is a difficult path to walk, what it likely means for the backstretch of the regular season. Now, after tonight, the Oil have 15 games remaining, so a whole lot to get to. Let's start with the obvious. Coming into this weekend, the Oilers desperately needed something to go right. You lose the way you did on Monday to the Sabres and then Thursday night to the Devils, and you feel very, very different about this team than you probably did, say, a month ago or so. If anything, you were kind of in my boat where you felt, well, they'll make the playoffs. They might beat the Kings, but other than that, they're not going to be able to hang with the teams in the Central, with Winnipeg, with Dallas, with Colorado. They probably can't beat Vegas. You might have a harder time than you did with the Kings last year. And there's a lot to unpack and a lot to try and understand there. But what's most important is that the Oilers found a way to win 2 hockey games against 2 teams that are not that good. And when you are going to make the playoffs, and I said this in a video I posted on Friday on TikTok and Instagram, and I think on Twitter too as well, I said very straightforward, if you want to be considered a serious hockey team, if you want to be a Stanley Cup contender, you need to beat the unserious teams, because if you can't beat the Buffalo Sabres of the world, the New Jersey Devils of the world, how are you going to beat those teams from the Central or the Golden Knights or even the Minnesota Wild 4 times in 7 tries if you can't win 2 or 3 games in a row against mediocre and bad teams? I was talking about it with one of my friends on Saturday, and the Rangers were playing the Blue Jackets, and he was going to the game tonight, and he was asking me, well, how are the Oilers doing? Are they still as good as usual? I hear you talking a lot that they don't score enough. How's the team with McDavid and Draisaitl not score enough? And what I told him was very straightforward. The Oilers' inability to score as of late, at least over the last month and change, is largely a fall off in the secondary guys. Or I should say there has been quite a precipitous fall off from Zach Hyman, who didn't play on Sunday. Nuge isn't having as nearly good of a counting stat season. The Arvidsson and Jeff Skinner, and Arvidsson had a goal on Sunday. Give him a lot of credit beating Shesterkin on that shot, an absolutely ridiculous shot. But right now, the Oilers are not in a position where they can drive the boat in these games, where they can make the plays they want to make happen. Instead, largely, they are in these coin flip games, these 50-50 propositions, and both teams kind of get into a game of chicken. Both teams are staring down each other, wondering, can we do this? Who's going to make the play? And these low event style games are not what you would have wanted if you were the Rangers coming into this game. And the Rangers made they made a conscious effort to slow this game down, to muck it up, to try and limit scoring chances on both sides, with the idea being all we need to do is win on 1, 2, 3 plays, because there are fewer overall sequences that matter. And we're going to be able to win those plays, and that'll be the difference. And against a team like Edmonton that has genuine generational talents like McDavid and the Hart Trophy frontrunner, in my opinion, in Leon Draisaitl. The Rangers trying to slow this game down and waiting for one of their stars to make a play in a game where Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are on the ice is not exactly the most strategic or, frankly, logical decision. If you were Peter Laviolette, I think you probably would have had a better chance trying to outscore them, winning a 5-4 type game, putting heat on just Stuart Skinner, putting heat on Darnell Nurse and on Troy Stetcher, and really trying to make those guys be the difference for the Oilers. And instead, this game was very back and forth. There were chances to be had. Both teams missed quite a few open nets. The Rangers in particular drove the net really well and made some chances, but just couldn't convert. And you ended up in a game where McDavid put his head down. He scored that crucial goal, and that really swung the game. And that's what I mean when I say waiting for a player to make a play outside of structure to just kind of one-up everyone that's out there. And Connor, to his credit, made something happen tonight. And he's been having a rough go of it as of late, negative goal differential since the 1st of February in Connor McDavid's minutes, which is insane to say about the best player in the world. But in the meantime, the Oilers have struggled in McDavid's minutes, and their entire recipe, the Oilers' entire formula for success, not just this year, but since McDavid was drafted, they need to dominate those minutes. And then that's where their depth, which has its moments like tonight where Arvidsson scored the really nice goal in transition. When you have those opportunities, you got to convert them. And to the Oilers' credit, they found a way. And the Rangers are not a good team. Do not confuse the loudness of the organization and the loudness of a good segment of its fan base with the quality of the product. The Rangers are a very, very mediocre team. They haven't won 3 games in a row since November 10th. They are largely getting by on Igor Shesterkin, a handful of power plays, and JT Miller really playing hard. Other than that, the Rangers defense is not very good. Urho Vakanainen is a very unimpressive defenseman. Will Borgen, Keandre Miller, Braden Schneider, none of those guys particularly impressive. None of them shut down guys. None of them are a Gus Forsling or a Jacob Slavin. Those guys all have strengths. Sure, it's why they're in the NHL. But most importantly, if you're the Oilers coming out of this game, and I should say this weekend, you bought yourself a little bit of breathing room. And there is work to be done here. Absolutely. We're going to talk about some of that work in a minute coming up in our next segment. But for right now, you saw the superstar first mantra, the superstar first style work for the Oilers tonight. Against a lower quality team like the Rangers, if the Oilers put their big guns out there and they dominate their minutes, that should be enough to beat the bad teams out there. And again, we talked about this in the context of the game on Thursday where the McDavid, Draisaitl, and Zach Hyman line dominated that game against the Devils, but because they were the only line that did anything, that didn't prove to be enough. And the Devils, even without Jack Hughes and Dougie Hamilton, probably have a slightly better defense than the Rangers do. You still have Kovacevic, you have Luke Hughes. I know Simon Nemeth has been getting an earful for his play over the last week or so, but they have a more polished defensive group, or at least a defensive group that has a higher end range of potential outcomes than what the Rangers are doing. And you give the Oil credit. It would be very easy for this group to effectively go into a holding pattern, to go into, well, we're going to make the playoffs. We need to get healthy. That's what's most important. And no Zach Hyman, no Matthias Ekholm. There's definitely a lot to consider there. And the Oilers need to get healthy. That's one of the key points we're going to talk about later on in the show. But for right now, this is breathing room. This is, okay, the sky is not falling. These are good things. We're going to take our first break of today's edition of Locked On Oilers. And when we come back, we're going to start to talk about what the final 15 games of the Oilers regular season look like right after this break. Eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. I love how Factor keeps you on track with healthy, delicious meals without the time-consuming prep. The Korean beef bowl and creamy Parmesan chicken are some of the best. They taste homemade, but take no effort. Factor also offers smoothies, breakfasts, and snacks, so you always have something nutritious ready to go. Eat smarter with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factor podcast and use code Factor Podcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Factor Podcast at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Today's show is also brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shell variety. The perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days, whether I'm at my desk working on the show, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost to hit my macros for the day. They're a solid go-to. Or if you're old school and you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out here on this Victory Monday edition of Locked On Oilers as we walk through a crucial weekend. And I am still very bearish on the Oilers' trajectory for the postseason championship contender status because their work over the last month is really damning. Because when you go under the hood and you look at the underlying metrics, you look at the special teams work, you look at the supporting cast. I mean, we're sitting here in March, and right now, if Connor or Leon aren't getting you a goal, who do you feel confident in this Oilers lineup is going to be able to contribute something of note for you? You look down this list. Leon and Connor are doing what you would expect. Connor's missed a few games. He's at 85 points in 60 games. He'll be over a point per game again. That's not the question. Leon is leading the league in goals. He's second in points. Hyman has 22 goals. Nuge has 16 goals. And then after that, Corey Perry is next with 14. Bouchard has 13. And then Jeff Skinner, who can't stay in the lineup consistently, is next with 11. So when you get past that first wave, when you get past this team's best players, this group is a lot more reminiscent of Oiler teams of years past, of Oiler teams that lacked the secondary scoring, that lacked the depth to mitigate the goal differentials, to mitigate the responsibilities of the overall lineup. And I think Thursday's loss to the Devils is really sticking with me in a way that it might not be for you. A, because I was at the game, and then B, because that game was the Oilers' breaking case of emergency kitchen sink strategy. It's Connor, Leon, and Zach Hyman together almost the entire game at 5-on-5. You had a few power play opportunities, you didn't score, and because of that, you were put in a position where even though Connor, Leon, and Hyman dominated the game, they had a 24-8 shots on scoring chance advantage, an 8-0 high danger chances edge, and because the depth wasn't good enough in the game, someone else wasn't able to chip in one more goal. Ultimately, that's what swung the game. And the game on Sunday against the Rangers kind of felt like the better version of what that game was. And Connor's got, and the Oilers weren't nearly as good tonight as they were on Thursday in terms of possession and the chances edge, but they were able to take advantage of the fact that the Rangers tried to have their star players outplay their star players. And when you are consciously making that decision against a team like Edmonton that has 2 of the 6 or 7 best players in the world, depending what you think about Leon and some of his other contemporaries, but that game was there for the taking, and the Rangers had chances. They missed some open nets. JT Miller had that huge post in the first half, and the Oilers, to their credit, they stood their ground. And Stuart Skinner wasn't outstanding, but he did just enough to win this game. And I like what I saw from the Oilers in terms of rising to the moment. And it's really one of the keys to developing a season-long mentality that's going to put you in a position to be successful. There is so much that goes into a season, both in terms of on the ice stuff, on the off the ice, on the ice, motivation, emotions, and Friday winning in overtime against the Islanders, that was a good feeling. They desperately needed that. You didn't want to lose 3 in a row. You need to start building positively. Now, you can use a game like this as a launching pad that we didn't play great, but we still found a way to win. So we can win even when we don't play perfectly. But now we're not striving for perfection. Perfection's not an attainable goal. It's inhuman. It's a little robotic. It's a little alien. We are striving for greatness. Words Timothy Chalamet. The goal is greatness. And to be amongst the greats, you need to show up every single day. Now, your effort, your energy, your motivations, that's going to ebb and flow throughout the course of a day, a week, a month, a season. But make no mistake about it. You have 15 regular season games remaining. 7 of them are against playoff teams. You have several games against your division opponents. You have got quite a few cupcakes in here against the bottom half of the Pacific Division. Teams like the Sharks, teams like the Ducks. And when you have those games, you can't let them go to waste. You can't get caught looking ahead. You know, if you're a football fan, you're definitely familiar with the concept of the look ahead game where you're playing a weak team and the week after you're playing a more important game and you get a little lost. You get a little bit too concerned with the next game and it tanks your performance. You're not as focused as you need to be. And it puts you in a position where you can execute to your highest ability. And the Oilers have work to do. Make no mistake about it. As good as you might think the Oilers are, as excited as you might be for Trent Frederick and Evander Kane's respective returns to this lineup come game 1 of the first round of the playoffs, we still got to get there. We're looking at about a monthish, about 30-ish days until the start of the playoffs. And between now and then, there's a lot to rectify. There is a lot to figure out. And as we've been saying for weeks now here on Locked On Oilers, you want to be gradually improving. You want to be playing better. You want to put yourself in a position where by the time the playoffs start, you are rolling. So that way there's no adjustment. There's no chemistry experiments as far as lines and pairs. We want to know who's with who, when, and how frequently. Are we going to get Connor Leon and Zach Hyman for good stretches of games when the Oilers are losing in the playoffs? Are we going to see Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in a more sheltered role? Are we going to see Jake Wallman play with Evan Bouchard? Or are we going to see Matthias Ekholm? Or are we going to see Darnell Nurse? And over the course of these next 15 games, it is absolutely essential that the Oilers iron out their lineup kinks and figure out the right combination of guys they want to have to put themselves in a position to be successful come the playoffs. Because as much as, yes, these regular season games matter, you want to win every game that's in front of you, you want to be playing good hockey, you need to play at a certain baseline level to have the capacity to eventually win a championship. And right now, that feels kind of far away for this group, that it's a struggle to score 2 or 3 goals consistently against mediocre and bad teams like Buffalo, like the Rangers, like the Islanders. There's work to be done here, folks, and it's really important that the Oilers find ways to keep improving down the stretch of these final 15 games. We are going to take one more break on today's show. When we come back, we'll tie a bow on the weekend, set the tone for the week ahead on this edition of Locked On Oilers, so be sure to stick around. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and can start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much money I was spending on takeout, and now I budget smarter, meal prep, and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term financial goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. One more time, that's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year subscription. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Victory Monday edition of Locked On Oilers. And to get right down to brass tacks, the Oilers returned to action on Tuesday against the Utah Hockey Club, who are hanging around the periphery of the playoff race. After that, Winnipeg, Seattle. Winnipeg is still very much a dangerous hockey team. Seattle is a game you need to have. You get to see the Stars, who are very much a playoff team and doing a nice job of incorporating Mikko Rantanen. Their game against Colorado on Sunday afternoon was very, very entertaining. You get Seattle again. You get Calgary, a really important battle of Alberta for the Flames, who are still hanging around in the playoff race, much to the credit of Dustin Wolf, Nazem Kadri, and a handful of guys who looked around and said, okay, if you don't believe in us, we'll go out there and do it. Then you get Vegas, then you get Seattle, then the Kings, then Anaheim, then St. Louis, then San Jose again, then Winnipeg again, then LA again, then San Jose again. You get the Sharks 3 times, you get Anaheim in there, you get Utah, you get Seattle. You're not going to win all of those games, just like they're not going to lose all of the games to teams that might be better than them. And look, there are 15 games remaining. And every single one of these games is an opportunity for the Oilers to make some type of progress. Now, there are different tiers of progress, different types of progress when you want to talk about the success of a unit. You know, if you want to get the power play or the penalty kill fine-tuned so it's executing at a higher level. If you want to put certain line combinations or defensive pairs together, if you want to try Darnell Nurse with Evan Bouchard, if you want to try Jake Wallman on the right with Darnell Nurse, and you want to keep Ekholm and Bouchard together, and then you want to do Kulak and Emberson as your third pair, and you have that opportunity. And I have always looked at it like you need to maximize your opportunities. And if you're looking around at the debris of what's been a rough run of form as of late, and you're trying to understand what's not right, and it's nothing glaring, yeah, the goaltending needs to be better, but that's not something you're really going to fix. Stuart Skinner's flaws as a player are pretty straightforward. He's a little too slow going post to post. He uses too much of his upper body to push off from side to side, so he ends up swinging himself a little bit further, and because he's swinging himself to build momentum to move himself, he's a little bit more off balance, and it makes it harder for him to recover, reset, refine his base. But when we're talking about the opportunities here, the only way you can answer questions you have as a coach and a decision maker is by playing the games and taking evidence. That's really my goal here if I'm Chris Knobloch and if I'm Stan Bowman down the stretch of these final 15 regular season games. I want to try things out. I want to see Jeff Skinner playing more. When John Klingberg is healthy and ready to play, I want to see John Klingberg more. I want to see Jake Wallman with Bush. I want to see him with Nurse. I want to see him with Kulak. I want to find out the most optimized pairs we possibly can have. So that way, by the time the playoffs start, we don't have the need for Philip Broberg to draw in to play on his offside with Darnell Nurse midway through the conference final. And it's really important that the Oilers don't get complacent and don't settle for what they have that works already, as opposed to trying to find something that might work better. And it's really difficult to convince stakeholders, whether it's a GM or it's a coach, to go against their instincts, because instincts is a lot of what gets these guys to where they are. They feel that because of their skills, they've gotten where they are. And because of that, they don't want to go against their instincts, because their instincts are such a crucial part of developing a strategy for operating in these spaces, in these environments. And it's why some of these decision makers, GMs and coaches, are so stubborn. It's why they won't go away from certain archetypes of players, and GMs are constantly searching for their version of blank or this version of blank. And because of that, they are prone to blind spots and biases. And that's really one of the tricks of being a good decision maker, not just in sports, but in life, is being able to account for your blind spots, your weaknesses, and your evaluation. So that way you're more well-rounded. In an ideal world, you want to have a nice network that gives you actionable information. And the Oilers can't find out who plays well with who until they go out there and do it. So that's my prescription for these final 15 regular season games for the Oilers. Try things out, look to win, find ways to win. Bad teams find ways to lose games. Good teams find ways to win games. And that's really the difference. For a lot of February and some of March, the Oilers have been finding a way to lose these tight games and finding a way to win against the Islanders, finding a way to win against the Rangers. Those are good. Those are coin flip games that you got to go your way. Now you want to keep building outward, building upward. So that way, by the time we get to the first round and an inevitable showdown with the LA Kings, the Oilers are ready to go. But that will just about do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. I want to thank everyone that made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out Locked On NHL, covering all of the biggest stories across the league with the local experts of Locked On. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.